I've been saying I want to stop streaming for 5 years. Well, for basically the past 5 years. And I still say to this day, I'm going to stop streaming in 5 years. But every time I say it, I inevitably get someone who's not happy with that. They say, Ludwig, you have to keep making content. I want to go to your channel and see what's going on. And I, a rational person, understand that's not possible. I can't be making content forever. I won't be entertaining forever. I won't even be around forever, so it doesn't make sense. One day I have to stop. I'd rather stop on my own terms. That makes a lot of sense. But then when other people stop without telling me and consulting me beforehand, I'm getting a little pissed off about it. And it just happened today with Rooster Teeth, a company that I think might have been one of the first YouTube videos I have ever watched when I started watching YouTube when I was 13 years old, is gone now. 21 years of making shit, they are gone now. And they did it without conferring with me. What the fuck? Now, obviously, Rooster Teeth's been a huge inspiration for a lot of people, like Laserbeam, who said he wouldn't have had a career without Rooster Teeth as an early inspiration. Nick from The Yard said that's one of the companies he wanted to work for when he was like a young little chap, you know, and I know a lot of people who were in that same boat, and I even get a small micro fraction of it now with people who want to work at Off-Brand, which is terrifying to think about, but Rooster Teeth has been an institution for a long, long time. They were the first podcast I'd ever watched. The Rooster Teeth podcast, I've probably seen 500 episodes. I've heard this intro so many times. I deadass thought you had to start a podcast by introducing yourselves with the names of the people on the podcast or you wouldn't win an award, until I had my own podcast. And I was like, actually, you can just talk about shit, fart, and cum, and that's fine too. Now, obviously, Rooster Teeth didn't have the most beautiful exit a company could. It wasn't the prettiest death, and not that you really can have a pretty death, I think. But you know, they got into some heat. We talked about it on this channel. October 2022 was when a lot of the stuff came out internally on how they weren't the best company to work for, and they tried to clean up their image and do better. But what didn't come back was the views, the way that they were able to make money, the community members. That was never where it once was, like 10 years ago. And it's tough because they are a huge company. I mean, they have hundreds of employees, and they had to deal with several rounds of layoffs, like that have happened basically all over esports and the gaming industry and the content creator industry. But they dealt with it until today. And the CEO, Jordan, threw out a message on Rooster Teeth's website, and they basically said that, hey, it's been tough to keep Rooster Teeth running due to challenges facing digital media resulting from fundamental shifts in consumer behavior and monetization across platforms, advertising, and patronage, which is a bummer because I think Rooster Teeth did a lot right. One of the things that they did that I thought was super sick is that they had all their community members, all of the paying patronage, like they talked about there, on their own website, roosterteeth.com. They weren't beholden to a YouTube or a Twitch or even like a Patreon. They had their own thing. They were able to service all their videos to their subscribing members through their own page and then get the largest cut of it, which is always really smart to me. And they always said that they even thought YouTube was like their competitor, which is a mindset that nobody has nowadays. They're just like, oh, we have to do YouTube. Back in the day, they were doing stuff before YouTube, which is crazy to think about. But eventually, they switched, right? They sold, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. And I think they did some things that might be wrong, but it's not exactly like this death of Rooster Teeth was a surprise. You know, I think it's been pretty obvious. I do a daily check-in, or not a daily check-in. I do like every 6-month check-in. I do like a little self-indulgent 6-month check-in where I look at a YouTube channel, YouTuber, or creator that I like, and I see what they're up to if I haven't watched them in a long time. Just, let's see if they're still kicking, if they're still killing it. Even if I don't like what they're currently doing, if it's not my interest currently, I want to make sure they're doing well or at least see what's up. And, things haven't been so up for Rooster Teeth. AT&T was talking about trying to sell Rooster Teeth literally 3 years ago. So writing has been on the wall. Clearly, they weren't able to find a buyer, and so they decided it was better to just cut their losses and stop at least losing money. Now, this doesn't mean that everything Rooster Teeth has created is gone forever. They, I think, are still in conversations to sell their other IP, like Red vs. Blue, Ruby, and Genlock, and those more valuable IPs might be purchased by someone, more individually rather than having to buy the whole of Rooster Teeth. And then also, I actually work with Rooster Teeth with the Yard podcast. They have a podcast network. A bunch of podcasts are in their network. They sell ads across all of those podcasts. The Yard is one of those. And we actually got an email that's like, hey, we're still around. I don't know if they're around forever or how long they'll be around, but for now they are, and we'll still get ads for the Yard podcast that we will eventually ruin and not get paid for. So there is that. But let's go to, I think, why Rooster Teeth might have collapsed. And it starts with a company that you might know, Machinima. And Machinima eventually became a company called Fullscreen, which purchased Rooster Teeth in 2014 for an undisclosed amount of money. And the reason they were purchased, according to Bernie Burns, one of the founders of Rooster Teeth, was to be able to compete with the big conglomerates like HBO and Netflix, who they saw as their modern day, at the time, competitors. And I get that. You're not going to be able to outscale a Netflix or HBO unless you have the backing of a much larger company, which at that point was Fullscreen for them. And then Fullscreen got bought by Otter Media, who also owned Crunchyroll, and then that got rolled into like Warner Media, part of AT&T, which eventually got split off into Warner Bros. Discovery, which is a merger between Warner Bros. And Discovery, owned by AT&T as their entertainment arm. It's a lot of fucking hands that were being transferred along the way, a lot of corporate companies, and a lot of people have come to the conclusion that corporate mergers suck, and we just have to stop supporting them and start fighting them. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I'm sure there are examples of corporate mergers that have worked. And even this one, after the merger, there was a lot of success. This is RTX, which is the convention that was held by Rooster Teeth until they shut it down this past December. And it started with an attendance of 600 in 2011 and then climbed every single year, 5,000, 10,000, 30,000, 45,000. And this is after the merger. They hit peaks of 60,000 people attending every year. Now, I don't think Rooster Teeth was aided by COVID. I think that expedited the shutdown of Rooster Teeth. They might have been around for another few years, or they might have even been able to turn things around had COVID not been a thing. But it does make me think about my company, because this is Off-Brand, a company I'm also hoping to scale up. And when I scale up a company, I look at the only examples of other companies who have done that in the space. And I think a lot of them have an issue where they are basically built around a singular creator, and if that creator goes and the company goes. But in Rooster Teeth's case, they did the unthinkable. It wasn't based around any specific creator. The brand Rooster Teeth is much larger than any individual person, which is a very impressive thing to do. However, they did sell out. They did eventually get a buyer. And I'm not saying that's bad, right? They could have had good reasons to do it. I don't think it was just to make fucking money and get out of there. But I do think it is what made them lose the edge and the charm, because it was no longer about just what the employees wanted to make and the cool shit they wanted to make happen. It was about also feeding the bottom line and the demands of the owner of what you are trying to create, which I've talked about this before. I'm hoping to avoid by making Off-Brand a workers' co-op, where all of the workers are owning the company and getting to decide what they do, what they make, how much they make, et cetera, et cetera. And my goal with that is to make something that lasts. Nothing lasts forever, that's a fact. But I'd like to be able to make a sustainable company that makes cool shit, that if you work at, makes your life better. And hopefully in 20 years, you don't see the shutdown of that, and that's able to outlive me. That's just my fucking goal. Anyway, I wanted to get that out there. And maybe it'll crash and burn, and this will all be an embarrassing failure that we'll talk about in years from now. But I'll take the risk, and I'll put my all into it so it doesn't happen. And I appreciate companies like Rooster Teeth for being examples. Even if it didn't work out, 21 years is fucking impressive, and the people who made it deserve to get their laurels now. And may it rest in our memories. Shout out Rooster Teeth for inspiring everyone. And that's all. Subscribe. See you later. Goodbye. Goodbye now. Goodbye. See you later. Goodbye.